Art of Manliness crew. My name is Danny Clark, and I'm the Curriculum Director for a company called MovNat. Now, if you haven't heard of us yet, MovNat stands for Moving Naturally. We cover a wide spectrum of natural human movement patterns, all the way from really basic foundational movements like crawling, deep squatting, and even getting up off the ground, to really high-level movements like climbing up and over walls or climbing up trees and vaulting over objects. Now, it's a ton of fun, and the goal is always threefold. It's trying to develop effectiveness first, then efficiency, and eventually adaptability. Now, for the purposes of your program, Strenuous Life, Brett wanted me to choose some of these movements that would be best suited for developing mobility. So what I've done is I've created two different workouts for you to follow. And really, they're just short movement sequences that should only take you 5 to 10 minutes. If you practice these every single day, or even as warm-ups for your workouts, however many you're doing a week, you're definitely going to see some improvements in mobility, and you're going to also regain some awesome movement patterns that are going to be useful in your real life. So let's get started. Okay, so let's get started with these movement sequences. Now, we're always going to start with breathing, and the reason we start with breathing is twofold. Breathing is tied to efficiency, and efficiency is tied to moving well and performing well in real life. Second is, breathing is also tied to our overall state in terms of fight or flight or rest and digest. And by breathing better, we're going to put ourselves into a more relaxed state. So let's start with that in a lying position. So I'm going to talk you guys through it, and you guys can either follow along or you can watch and practice on your own time. So in a lying position, I'm just going to start by finding one hand right in my abdominal area and one hand on my upper chest. Okay, and now as I do this, as I breathe, what I'm going to do is think about breathing into my abdominal area. And I'm not just trying to shove my belly out. What I'm trying to do is breathe right into the solar plexus area as I expand out also through my lower ribs. So what I'm paying close attention to is making sure that as I breathe in, my bottom hand is moving, and my top hand is really not moving too much, especially up in your upper chest area. A lot of us tend to hold a lot, harbor and hold a lot of tension in our shoulders, so just by doing this, we're going to add some mobility to our shoulder area. Each movement sequence will start with 10 breaths. The next sequence we're going to do is some side rolling. Okay, so you're going to be already on your back. We're going to go back to that same position. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just twist my body. To start, I want to make sure my mid-back is pressed against the ground. There should be a little bit of space in your lower back, okay, but we want to make sure we're not in an arch position to begin. Okay, so I find that good position. From here, what I'm going to do is just reach my arms overhead. Okay, I can get a nice stretch already just by reaching, trying to touch the back of my wrist to the ground and breathing. Okay, and from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just twist at my shoulders, and I'm going to try to keep my hips glued to the ground as long as possible. Okay, so I twist the shoulders, I reach as far as I can. You can see there's a nice stretch going on. I breathe, take a breath, and then I just roll all the way onto my stomach. Okay, and then from here, what I'm going to do is just roll back. Okay, so same thing. Hips are going to stay glued to the ground. You might go into a little bit of a spinal arch here. If you feel any pain in this, just don't push too hard. Okay, so just back off and find a range of motion that doesn't feel uncomfortable. Okay, I get a nice little stretch throughout my whole front line of my body, and then I flop over. Okay, and then I can do the same the other direction. Now, using your arms to help you reach will help a little bit, but the more you do it, the more you can dissociate your body and get that stretch through your midsection and breathe and relax, the less you're going to actually really need the arm. Okay, so we're going to move on to some rocking. So you're already in a lying position still. Okay, what we're going to do is you're going to use your arms to help you rock yourself up to a seated position, to what we call bent sit. So I'm going to lift my legs up just a little bit, reach my arms overhead, and just rock myself up. Now when I'm here, what I want to do is try to find a good seated position. We've all been in school where we've been sort of just kind of hunched over if we were on the ground when we were younger, or playing sports where we just kind of hang out here. What we're going to try to do is build some more stability in our lower back and find our hips underneath our shoulders. So to do that, I'm going to widen out my stance a bit. Okay, use the back of my knees here to help pull me into position. Okay, now if that doesn't happen, if that little pelvic roll doesn't happen, and you still feel like straining in your upper back or mid back, you can just post yourself in that position. If you still don't feel it, just try to get as close as you can, and over time, as your hips open up, you'll get there. Okay, so I'm going to take one breath here, and then I'm going to do another rep. Okay, and then from there you'll move on to your next movement. Okay, so your next movement is going to be some side bent sit reverses. Now if you're wondering how many reps or whatever you should be doing for each of these sequences, just look below and I'm going to have a whole program outlined for you. Okay, for right now I'm just teaching you the movements, you can kind of practice them with me, but for the actual workouts, they'll be below. Okay, so you ended in bent sit from the rock. All you're going to do is let both knees fall to the side. Okay, so that both knees are on the ground, both shins are touching the ground, and both feet are touching the ground on the sides of them. Okay, and what I want to do here is just try to push my hips down toward the ground so that my hips make contact fully with the ground. Now, most likely you're not going to be able to do that at first. You're going to be somewhere over here, and you're probably going to be kind of sort of bent over here, side bending to sort of compensate. Now what I want to do is get my center of gravity over my hips, because they're my base of support, to not only make this efficient, but of course to get the mobility that we're looking for in our hip joints. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to post, allow myself to be a little bit slanted and diagonal. I'm just going to start to walk myself into that position. Now if you find you feel this in your knee, just back off a little bit. You can even kind of push down in the knee area, okay, push it into the ground and allow the hip joint itself to sort of sink down. Okay, one thing you can also do to sort of feel the rotation in your hip, where you should, and not in your knee, is just to practice pushing your hips forward and then sitting down, just so you can kind of feel that action that you need to do to sit down properly and stretch the right tissues. Okay, once you've established this position for a bit, we're going to switch to the other side. For your first time you do this, you're probably going to want to post behind you, lift the knees, and roll over to the other side. And again, create length in your spine. Okay, you're going to do the same thing. If you need to kind of move your hips back and forth to feel the stretch in the right area. At the same time, we're not totally just like relaxed stretching here. We're trying to build some stability here, which is going to help us with our flexibility and mobility. Okay, so I'm creating length in my spine, shoulders are spread, and then I can reverse back to the other side. Now the more you do this, the more you're not going to need your hands, because your hips are going to open up. And at first it might feel a little ratchety as you do this, where like you feel stuck. And that's okay, just back off, lean back, use your posts. You don't have to force your way through it, but just kind of find the path that's going to work for your hips. And again, the more you do this, the more they're going to open up. Your joint health is going to improve, and all the muscles that surround your hips are going to open up. And that's what we want. Okay, so we just did some side bent sit reverses. Now what we're going to do is some wall stretching and wall reaching. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is just a wall reach. So what you're going to do is touch your hips, your mid-back right below your shoulder blades, and the backs of your shoulders to the wall. So touch my back to the shoulders to the wall. What I want to do is roll my thumbs away from my midline so my hands face each other. So just like so. Now what I'm going to do is also touch the back of my head to the wall. Okay, and this might feel a little uncomfortable, but this is really the natural position of where your head should be, with the chin tucked. If it makes you stop breathing, just back off a little bit, but that's what we're working toward. So take a couple breaths here first. And then what we're going to do is we're going to sweep our arms overhead and do a reach. Okay, so I'm going to have to kind of use my own strength to kind of push my own flexibility here. So I'm going to sweep my arms up, palms are going to face away from each other, elbows are going to stay straight, and I'm going to try to touch my wrists to the back of the wall. Now you may say, oh, that's easy, no problem. But what happened to your ribs? Okay, if your upper back below your shoulder blades came off the wall, that means that you actually just crunched your spine to kind of get up there. So what I want to do is press that mid back against the wall, feel that point. You can even put a pen there to kind of hold it in place and then reach. And wherever you stop is going to be where you stop and breathe. Over the course of a couple breaths, you might be able to reach the wall. Over time, the more you do it, the more you will be able to reach. Okay, that's just our standing with our overhead reach. Okay, so we just did our standing with overhead reach. Okay, so now what we're going to do is a nice stretch that's going to help complement that movement. So we're going to put some pressure and it can actually be a little bit more relaxing and passive. Okay, now before I do that, I just want to explain that, first of all, this position with the overhead reach is really important for mobilizing your shoulders, mobilizing your upper back. These are areas that tend to be very stiff. We don't really reach overhead very much. And often if we do, because we're so used to compensating with our back, we just, again, crunch our spine. Okay, in MovNat we do a lot of overhead stuff like what you're going to get to on your other sequence, like hanging and then eventually climbing, getting up and over the bar and swinging from bar to bar and all kinds of really fun movements. And if this position isn't optimal, your neck, your back aren't going to feel so good. So this also sets you up for other higher level movements. Now for your wall stretch, what you're going to do is you're going to get into the same position except for reversed. Okay, and you're not going to belly flop the wall. You're going to be a little bit away from it. You're going to put your hands up on the wall. Okay, I'll lower down for a sec so you can see. Okay, and what I want to do here is I'm going to keep my elbows totally straight. Okay, I'm going to roll my shoulders away from each other. Okay, so the pits of the elbows roll toward each other. And then I'm going to keep abdominal tension to make sure I'm not arching my back. And I'm just going to sink into this stretch. Now, what might happen is A, elbows bend, B, like I mentioned, the back arches, or C, the head just juts forward. Okay, so we don't want to make this too much of a relaxing stretch. We want to make sure that the right tissues are actually opening up. So again, it's going to look like this here. Okay, and I just find this position and breathe. Your specific instructions will be in your program as they change over time. All right. Okay, so you just finished your wall stretching and reaching practice. So now to finish and to close each practice, you're just going to come to this simple cross-legged position. In MovNat we call this cross-sit position. Okay, and you're just going to find length in your spine. Again, you can grab your knees however you want to find that length. You can post behind you if you need to, or you can even sit on a pillow if that helps. And we're just going to breathe here for a couple cycles of breaths. Okay, so doing the same thing, you can use the kinesthetic feedback with your hands if you need to. You're just going to breathe. Again, I'll designate the number of breaths down below. And to finish, you can just kind of fold forward. It'll feel like a nice release for your lower back since your back's been kind of working in a good way the whole time. So it'll just look like this. After I'm done breathing, I'll just reach forward. Kind of try to let it come from your hips first and then round the spine and just let everything go. And then you'll just finish with one long inhale and one long exhale. Okay, so finishing with a nice gentle stretch, trying to just promote some relaxation and hopefully carry over some of this relaxation and good breathing to the rest of your day.